Good morning and welcome to the Rewind Show, the Sunday supplement 226. I'm Steve Brown, and over there is Brent Peters. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Still drying out from yesterday, but no, I'm doing okay. How
Drying
about you?
out? Why? Why did you have a lot to drink?
No, I got a little bit wet yesterday.
All right.
It wasn't too bad though. We're expecting thunderstorms, but it was just that stuff that wets you through, isn't it?
Did you get wet with it with a sweat and emotions running out because of the great tempo of that game yesterday and the fantastic goals we scored and the weary goal we conceded?
Well, hold on, where's my piece of paper? Well, I was going to mention it, but I tell you what. Let's fly straight into this show because there's quite a lot to cover this morning. You talk about tempo, but I've got it on my. There was a total contrast in my eyes from Tuesday's game to Saturday's. Tuesday's, the tempo's been good. The tempo were good against Route 1. The tempo was good against even Rosedale. But yesterday, Brent, I've got to admit, we're a bit pedestrian from me. I felt like falling asleep halfway through, if I'm being honest.
Well, let's break yesterday's game down, right? First and foremost. And let's see where we can get to with it. Right. So what we did is there were two sides picked. One played one shape. The first game was one shape.
Yeah.
And then the second half, so I class that as the second game, played an alternative shape. Right. So the second half, we played the shape that we played against Chadderton. And in the first game, the team played the shape that we normally play, what we're accustomed to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, right. So let's break this down because there's two different teams gone out there and two different sets of players gone out. So let's talk about the first game in the first half. So your thoughts before I make my thoughts. Which one are you talking about when you said I were falling asleep and this and are we talking about the whole game or are we talking about the first 45 minutes as we break it down?
For me personally, even though we scored the goals in the first half, I thought the second half performance was better.
Right. So I'm kind of glad you said that because if I'd have just come in and hadn't have said what I've said and broke it down like I've said, and I come steaming in like I'm capable of doing, I can imagine that there's people out there going, oh, he's not giving any praise, he's negative, he's this, he's that, he's the other. I'm glad because let's have it right here. And this is why I haven't said anything about my opinion yet, but it's interesting to hear your opinion because you haven't missed a game. You have been at every game, and I know that that you have been absolutely, buzzing off every game that you've seen up to now because I've had a feedback off you and you've told me that you're buzzing and everything that you've seen up to now. So I think in this instance, before I break everything down, it's important that you had your opinion because you're there, you've seen every game, so it's levels, it's standards. Yeah. You've seen the previous games, you've just touched on it. You've seen the Route 1 game in blinking 30 degrees of heat.
Yeah.
And they've coped with it and done absolutely remarkably well, and looked a formidable team.
Just the pace of the game and the pace of the players in the
Yeah,
opening three games compared to yesterday was a total contrast.
correct. Now, so you've seen that, and then we went to Chadderton against a very, very good Chadderton team, and let's make no bones about it. that first 45-minute team of Chaddertons were virtually their, last season's main team.
Yeah.
So again, another solid, very, very good performance. Then we went to Moorside on Saturday, and we'll talk about the first team. If you want my honest opinion, and I'll come out, and I'm not saying anything I didn't say in the changing room. It was poor. I know, people can be blinkered, and you can come off and say, well, we scored 3 goals, but it were poor from the levels and standards that we've set ourselves. And you've got to understand that if that were a North West Counties game, we'd have been picked off, and I'm not being funny. We'd have been coming out on the wrong side of the blinking of a scoreline.
Yeah.
Let's not beat about the bush.
Yeah, because they had chances.
We had chances. Now, the issue for me is, and again, I flick back to last year and the year before, and no doubt that people will forget that our cup exploits, and that we've been to 4 cup finals in 3 seasons, which is absolutely fantastic. Let's not take that away from anybody. That's fantastic. But the last 2 seasons, we set our stall out, and we said that there's never a better chance for that group of players to stake a claim and be pushing for promotion. And for me, they would never have had a better chance. Yeah. Because they proved what a formidable side they are in the one-off games. Some teams haven't been to a cup final in their history. Never mind 4 in 3 seasons. So it was good. Now, one of the reasons why, and again we come back to the previous 2 seasons, we've underachieved where it matters in the league, and as a manager and as a coaching staff, you have to break down and have a look why you think this is. And a lot of times it's not down to the lack of ability, it's down to mindset and commitment and determination and attitude. And that's the word I'm looking for, is attitude. And again, I know I'm harping back over previous, but I have to get my point across here. So if we turn round and say on a Tuesday night we go to Exton Villa and we against a very, very good side, and we score, I don't know, it were 3 goals, I think it were. We beat them by 3. We beat them by 3 goals and put in a formidable performance. And then on the Saturday after that, and everybody's on a high, because that's the first time in I think in all cup competitions we were playing in, we met Exton Villa and we got beat by them.
Yeah,
and we got beat by them in the league. But in this particular game, we changed things. We went out. Players had a different mindset, and they were determined, and they beat them comfortably. Now then, on the Saturday following that, we then go to, I'm sure it was Daisy Hill.
Yeah. And it were a car crash.
Now, that, you're up there 1 minute, and 48 hours later, you're down there, and, and that comes, and it's virtually the same team, and then all of a sudden, attitudes are different. Well, that comes down to mindset and attitude, and you're not going to get promotion or challenge for promotion with players who have that kind of attitude, that they'll turn it on when they want to, but when they don't want to, or they're not turning it on,
because that's kind of character.
It's not going to get you anywhere. And it's no surprise when you looked at the first lineup that went out, quite a few of them players were around us last season. And, again, like you've touched on, It's attitude. So and if we break that, now what we've tried to do this season in our recruitment is bring in what we consider to be players that's going to enhance us, improve us, but hopefully players with a different mindset, with a winning mentality.
Strength of mind.
Exactly, because you're not going to go through a season. You are going to have bad times, but then but if you want to achieve, if you look at people that's got promotion, the teams that got promotion, you take your Atherton Allies, you take your Chaddertons, when we've gone toe to toe with them teams, we've ever been on a one-off game. We've been every bit as good, if not better. I'm not saying last season at the end. Obviously, we got a right pummeling off Atherton Allies, but that was because I were giving players who've been on the fringe most of the season for one reason or another a chance to stake the claim to try and push into the cup final side. And again, they picked the Riptors. And that's why then some of them players didn't get in. And then some of these players are the players that start asking questions. Well, why am I not in? Well, to be in, you've got to be consistent in your performances. Now, again, I come down and break it. So if we break it all down in that first game, we were playing a formation we've played for the last 4 or 5 seasons. So everybody knows, everybody apart from in defence of the team that started, Don Williams has only just come in this time, so he's omitted from what I'm saying here, right? Paul Shalobe is omitted from what I'm saying here. Jack Parker is omitted from what I'm saying here. And also, Josh Waln is omitted from what I'm saying here, because they're players that have just returned. And in the case of Josh, or come back, or new to us, in the case of Josh Waln, he has played for under me before, but we weren't playing the 4-2-3-1 formation.
No.
So in fairness to those players, what I'm going to say next, I'm going to take them out a little bit of this, but the rest of them know exactly how we want and what's been drilled into them at training, how we execute a 4-2-3-1 formation. Now then, we'll bring what I'm going to say next to current. So my coaches, who've worked tirelessly over the last few weeks and done really, really well, and I have to say this and praise them, done really, really well with the bunch, with the group. And we've got it all on paper, the ones that's been at all the sessions. We've got it all on paper, the ones that's been to most of the sessions, and the ones on paper that's been at a poor return in coming to the sessions.
Yeah.
Right? But what I'm trying to get at is that our coaches have done really, really well. And one of the things that's been instilled into them is leadership and talking and communication. And we'll talk about leadership, and we'll talk about, so with leadership comes talking and communication. It all fits in. Because if you're a good leader, then you're obviously going to talk and you're going to communicate with players. So let's start off. I would expect that leadership to be brought into that game. Now, they know I were playing a 4-2-3-1 formation. Now, you tell me why in that game, in that half, we had 3 strikers on that pitch, which is right, but most of the game was stood high up the pitch in a straight line like a bleeding washing line. Now, you tell me, before I go any further, am I right or am I wrong here? Did you see the same 3 as a washing line stood high? There was no movement, there was no interaction, no dropping in, there was no trying to get on the ball, there was no trying to pull centre halves about, there was no linking, there was nothing. It was a case of we're up here, knock us the ball, get the ball to us, and we'll do the damage.
Yeah. There was a lack of movement apart from when we scored the goals.
Yeah, we'll come to the goals in a minute, but it's not about football. Is not just about scoring goals. How are you going to execute? How are you going to create something to make them goals? If you're stood, and I used to say this even in my first day of coaching, back 30, 40 odd years ago, and my first day of coaching, I'd say to a player, if you stand still up there, that floodlight will mark you.
Yeah, you ain't going nowhere.
You get me?
Yeah.
So if we revert that into kind of a centre back, he could be the slowest centre back on the planet Earth.
Yeah, but you're going to make
But
him look good.
if you're stood still, that centre back who's slowest on the planet Earth will mark you.
Yeah.
And when that ball comes up to you, because there's no movement, when that ball comes up to you, all of a sudden you're in a fighting position because that centre half's with you, and more than often than not, he might be a big gorilla and he'll end up blinking mothering you.
But there's no surprise that when we did put, I know we're going to talk about the goals, but there's no surprise that when we did put that movement together, Brent, especially for Liam Greenwood's third goal, when we put the movement together, we were successful.
Yeah, listen, there were some good points in the Liam Greenwood goal, the build-up play to that and the finishing
was everything we expect to see.
Yeah, it's good. But there's got to be movement. There's got to be interact. You can't have a centre forward, they can't all three be up there because straight away, even being up there, right, on a goal kick, straight away, it's like, well, they have to get the ball to us. But that's not how we have been playing. That's not how they've been coached. They drop into little pockets. They drop into areas, right? So if you go back to when, let's talk about if Kyle were up there because Kyle weren't playing in that first game.
He'd almost dropped back towards the halfway line.
Yeah, you're correct. If Alex Mellor was in the team, I'm using these because they were regulars playing it, they would drop in. If Toby Wright is in the team, who wasn't in the team now because he's off on his jollies, right? But he's injured anyway. But if Toby Wright were in the team, he'd then drop in as well. So then you'd have two dropping in. You'd have one a bit higher. But what you're doing then, you're creating space because you're going to pull defenders into areas they don't really want to be in. But if you're going to stand up there as a unit, as a three, and the ball and wait for a ball to come up to you, it's bad. It's bad play. It's not happening. So from a coaching point of view and a manager's point of view, it was bad play. It wasn't good. Now, okay, and then you look at things. You look at like your midfield unit. If a team that you're playing against, let's revert to the other night and compare. So if you compare the team that played the other night against Chadderton, and you compare the team that played in the first game against Moorside, right? I'd say that Chadderton's chances the other night before half-time, even though they went 2-0 up, they scored the second goal right on half-time. They scored the first goal out of nothing, probably 3/4 of the way through the first half.
Yeah.
But other than that,
Zero.
I didn't really see us. I thought we looked solid, and they weren't really getting through us. In fact, it must have been that frustrating that our own Lewis Byrne was dropping deeper and deeper to get on the ball because he was frustrated because the ball wasn't coming up to him.
Yeah, because we were breaking it down.
We were breaking it down. So if we're breaking it down, what does that tell you? We're winning our battles in them areas. We're competing. We're winning battles in them areas. Am I right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Right. Now, if we flick that on to yesterday, and your opposition are getting in and creating opportunities, but skying them, right, putting them over at bar. If they'd have had a clinical finisher, we'd have been in trouble.
We'd have been about 3 or 4 now, 4 down
So,
before half time.
correct. So if I look at that and look at it from an objective point of view, which area is not in control or getting us in control of that game?
Well, it's middle at the park.
Correct. 100%. So the middle of the park, out of possession.
They've got to dictate the pace of that game.
Correct. So the middle of the park, out of possession, for me, well, you've just answered the question. It were weary.
Because they were coming through too quick, too easily.
They were coming through us. They were coming through us. So everything that they've been coached, everything that had been going on, and the coaches have done absolutely fantastic when they're interacting, changing, their play, movement and everything else, and being in there and hunting in packs and winning the battles wasn't happening. And I'm not being disrespectful to Moorside. I think, in fact, I'm going to give them a lot of praise. They knew they were playing the North West Counties League. They took it seriously. They were working the socks off throughout the game. They asked a lot of questions in my eyes, and it was just unfortunate for them. We're talking the first game, that the finishing was the quality that we'd expect. So if we go back to the finishing, the first goal was an intelligent, and again this comes down to what's been drilled from the coaches. One of the things that used to wind me up when they go sideways, backwards, all that. We've had meetings with the coaches. We've got to get them making forward movements, and they've drilled that into them. And that got that forward movement, that forward pass between the lines, got us in, got Jack in, and he got wiped out. I think he got wiped out for a penalty, right? So the first goal was a penalty. Was a penalty all day long. But let's talk about the pass. The pass was good. It was between the lines. It was a great pass. It put him through.
And it just stretched the defence.
It just stretched the defence, and we were in. So the penalty, Ollie Hodgson steps up and takes the penalty, converts it well. Yeah, I don't know why Jack didn't take it. That might be a confidence issue, because let me talk about Jack. I think Jack's been exceptional in pre-season, exceptional. He's away now. It's his birthday, I think, one day this week, so we'll have to look out and be mindful of that. Yeah. But happy birthday, Jack, if we forget. But I don't think we will forget, right? But in fairness to Jack, he's had a tough time. He's had a barren season. He's struggled a little bit, but what I like about what's happening now is that he's brushed himself down. He never got his contract renewed, which was touched on before, but he hasn't sulked. He's thought, his attitude is exemplary, because he's coming back and thinking, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what I'm about. And you know what? Showed us, me, and the coaching staff exactly what he's about. And he's been fantastic in pre-season. Honestly, I can't praise him enough. And that's credit to him. And that's what we like, with good attitude, players with quality attitude. When you're down, you get back up again. Not when you're down, you stay down and you sulk and you blame everybody else. No, we don't want them people. We want the people like you, Jack, that's bounced back. I will show you. And he has done. Now, like we said, an intelligent ball through, but he should have took the penalty. It don't matter, he didn't do so, but all he did. Then we look at the second goal. Listen, Ollie Hodgson, again, I keep telling you, he's earned his right to get a contract. Ollie is work in progress. Yes, he wants more game time. I understand that. But we all know he can finish, and we all know he can score goals.
Yeah.
But there's other parts of his game that he needs to come into and developing, and that's what my coaches have got to work with him on.
Yeah.
If he's on the shoulder of a player, and he's on the shoulder of that player, when he receives the ball, I will back Ollie all day long to get that half a yard and finish.
We've seen it.
All day long. I'll back him all day long. And we've seen it, and he did it, right? You knew it. There were other aspects of his game when he's about dropping in, about getting hold of it, about movement, about bringing other people in. We've got to bring that into his game because he can't always just be stood on the shoulder of a defender.
No, he'll have to mix it up a bit.
He's got to mix it, yeah, right? Which is our job or the coach's job to do that. And obviously they will do that. There's not a problem. So, again, Ollie's goal was different class. We knew as soon as he received that ball, I turned around and said he'll finish this because he does do.
But you can that he's been working out as well because he's filling out.
Yeah. Ollie will just get better and better, but he's got to be patient, grounded and patient because he will be one hell of a player. He's going to be because like I said, there's nobody better. As soon as he received that ball,
bang!
I knew. I said he'll score this, and he did. Bang! He scores. But when he has, there were other instances. I mean, don't forget, in the first couple of minutes, we should have scored. We should have been 1-up. And he's let the ball get tangled under his feet, right on the goal line, basically.
I'll have to look through the...
It was right at the beginning, at the beginning of the game, right? But we know what he's about. We know he'll finish. So that were okay. And then the third goal, which was, listen, nobody's stopping that, but the build-up to it was good football.
That's what we've come to appreciate and see, haven't we, quite a lot.
Yeah, it was good football and an absolute terrific finish. Now, this is my next point. What I have to say. So we're now talking about so every one of them players in that team all have attributes. So you take Liam Greenwood, who produced an absolute unbelievable finish, who was on the end of a good. Link-up play, which involved, I think, Jet Parker and Jack Haywood. It was all good into link-up play and a bang, and he's hit it. Now then, this is my point about football, right? And this is where people have differing opinions. So when you look and you're watching a game of football and you see a player execute something like that, you think, wow. And then when you look at it and you think, why is he not getting the starting line? I mean, I'm not saying because we're only in pre-season, but like last year, why is he not getting a start when he can pick a pass out like that? He's got a great range of passing like Michael Gervin has.
Yeah.
Right? But the difference between Liam and Michael Gervin is Liam is a lot stronger than Michael Gervin. So if Michael Gervin gets in a mess because he's taken too many touches, right, the chances are if Liam gets in a mess because he's taken too many touches, he gets away with it because of his upper body strength.
Yeah.
So there's a slight difference, with them there. But then, as a manager, I'm only saying this is because this is what players have got to get in their mindset. And I had this conversation with one of my coaches 2 weeks ago with Alan Taylor when I'm having a conversation. And I said, as a coach, you might look over, like when we weren't talking about Liam Greenwood. In fact, I'll tell you the player we were talking about, and he's just come back to us, right? The player we were talking about was Conor Morris.
Yeah.
Now, you know as well as I know, Conor Morris on his day is probably
our best player.
Our best player. Our best technical player, yes. Technically. Let's not say best player because I'll break it down in a minute. Right?
Technical player.
Technically, he's our best player, right? He's clever. He's got good vision. He can finish. Right? If he puts all that in to his work rate,
he won't be playing for Baker Borough.
Out of possession, but he wouldn't be playing for Baker Borough. He'd be in Football League.
He would.
He'd be in Football League. Without a doubt. 100% in Football League.
You've said that since the beginning.
The issue is with Conor. is out of possession sometimes when it doesn't go for him because he sees something what other people don't see because he's clever and he's good, right? He gets frustrated. And when he gets frustrated, his head drops. But when his head drops and he's frustrated and we've lost the ball, we've now got a man down out of possession.
Yeah.
You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Now then, let's take it another one on there. So when that happens, and then you've got potentially this can happen with Kyle, let's be honest, because Kyle's a bit like this. So if it doesn't work out for Kyle, if he's not getting the ball like he likes the ball, and he's not, being allowed to do his stuff, he can get frustrated. And if he gets frustrated, his head can drop.
Yeah.
And if his head drops and Connor's head drops, all of a sudden, out of possession, you bloody two mere players down.
Yeah.
Because their head drops. So straight away, we wonder why we're getting ripped all over the place and get pulled apart, and people and players they get overloads and they get in and finish. They don't realise that they haven't contributed into that coming back issue. We just talked about it. Get back up. It doesn't matter if the ball hasn't come to you next time. It will. Believe. Get back up. It's all about work rate. Now, I had this conversation a few weeks ago before Connor's return, and we're talking about Connor, and I said, you as a coach, now I'm giving you now a coach's mindset and a manager's mindset. You as a coach can look and watch a player as in Connor Morris and look at his ability and see how good he is because you're watching him. It's technically, I'm watching the same thing, in training. He's doing tricks. He's beating players. He's got great vision. He's creating his own space. When players find him, he can finish. All that. You look at him, you think, he's different class. Yeah. But then when it comes to game day and the manager's not picking him, you think, why is the manager not picking him? And he's got so much ability, and he's got this, and he's got that, and he can do that. Well, the reason why the manager, because it's not just about in possession, it's about out of possession as well.
Yeah.
And you spend more time in a football match out of possession than you do in possession.
Yeah, and you can't carry players.
So you can't carry players. So it comes to the situation, if I've got a player that's not technically as good, but he can finish, and he can, do tricks, and he can do this, but he's nowhere near as good as Connor. But he'll give me the hard yards going back that way as well.
It more than compensates for that talent.
Correct. And this is the conversations that I've had, when people are thinking, why is he not picking him? Yeah. Well. So what Connor's got to do now going forward, and he's only just come back to us, he's got to put that into his game. And if he does...
it'd be brilliant. Be like a new signing.
Exactly. So anyway, that's just digressing from the first team that played. So I think we got to half-time. We were 3 goals up, but I honestly believe that in my opinion, that scoreline flattered us, in my opinion, because honestly, if they'd have had somebody at the top end of their pitch with the opportunities that they had, that 3 goals we scored, I think, could easily have been wiped out.
Yeah.
And the disappointment for me, and not only me, it's not just me saying it, because I know what Nigel said, the coach, at half-time. He said exactly the same. I mean, the thing is, they've got a coach, and they're the ones who are coaching the team, so they're the ones that need to address it. And it was addressed at half-time. The simple fact were, we didn't, in possession, there were times where we created some magic stuff, but out of possession, there were times where we never even laid a glove on them.
No.
We never got near them, and that worries me. That's kind of what worried me. The finishing was good at the top end of the pitch, but again, at the top end of the pitch, there was not enough movement. where they were dropping in little pockets and dropping in. Because if they do drop in little pockets, maybe that would have helped the midfield. Because all of a sudden, you've got an overload in there by the positions they were taking up.
Yeah.
Now, if you switch that,
But it comes back to what you were saying, though, Brent, when you talked about attitudes and mentality. Maybe the attitude was slightly different. Oh, we're only playing Moorside Rangers on this kind of pitch today, and then all of a sudden you've dropped a couple of gears down.
Yeah, we can look at attitude at one of them. We can look at that, and I get that, and I get what you're saying. But I do think that sometimes then movements make things a lot easier than what they do, like we talked about, where the three are stood up there like a washing line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you go back to the Chadderton game on the Tuesday with different personnel, all of a sudden, you know, the movement of the interaction of the players and the movement of the players, because players were dropping in, we didn't have kind of three central midfield players. At times we had 4 and 5 because the movement were there. And because the movement were there and people were dropping into areas, sometimes the striker or the strikers, if we were playing with two, or a 1 and a 1, you know, I'd rather say, you know, listen, it is what it is at the end of the day. It's just a number. You could turn round at Chadderton, you could say we played 3-1-4-1-1, or you could turn around and say we played 3-1-4-2.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. One of them two were dropping in and linking up with the midfield, and you know, and by them movements and the interaction and the communication, magic word that, yeah, and the communication, it made us more resolute and more solid. Now you look at the team that played in that first match in a different shape. There was zero communication, which disappointed me because there were some senior players in there that should have been communicating. And especially one senior player, for instance, knows full well what the roles and responsibilities are in a 4-2-3-1. And not once has it been explained to the lads up front, you need to drop in. Don't stay static up there. Don't stay as a 3. Movement. That's all it needed. But there's no leadership. It didn't happen. So that was the team at half-time, but they won 3-0. So on that front, and how we executed the goals was quite positive, right? And how they went in the net, positive. But overall, and you've identified it as well, like you said, it wasn't the best. So then at half-time, which were always happening, there's another team comes on with another set of players, different set of players, and we changed the shape. So it were totally different. So, you know, I come into the second, and again, there were certain things happening it was better than the first game, but it wasn't nowhere near the level that we got to in the Chadderton game.
No, it was the tempo was better, but still the ball retention was still lacking.
Yeah, by certain players, not by. Yeah. Listen, I don't like singling players out, but I think I need to single players out. I thought in the second game, I thought Louis Cantello, Ben Thompson, Brady Boardman, they played. You know, Dom Williams, Dom Williams was steady Eddie, and Ty, you know, I kind of think that they all played with a discipline, and they played with a mannerism that with that will to win. I do think that, and I kind of think that some of the other players wasn't even at the top end of the pitch. Everybody's been throwing bouquets at, and rightly so, at Germani, you know, rightly so, but let's have it right. If we're going to be right and truthful here, if that were a league game, I'd be on his I'd be on his case big time because he couldn't hold his freaking trousers up at times.
If that were a league game, Brent, you'd be subbing him.
Exactly. He were bouncing off him. He weren't even looking after it. So let's have it right. Them are standards. Just keep to your standards.
Say what we see.
Exactly. I mean, he were missing on Tuesday night because he's a school teacher and he need to take his year 11s or whatever year they are at Talton Towers. Well, I think he was still on that blinking one of them rides in Alton Towers. But no, listen. He's got to. People have got to get used to me because I've seen him. Everybody's excited by him. He's a top lad. He's a top player. He will be an handful for us. But come on Saturday, how many balls were bouncing off him?
90% of them.
So you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I'm just making a point.
Yeah. But then the goal we scored, you mentioned them players. I think Brady, Dom, Tomo, and Cantello all linked up to set it and put it on a plate for, well, not a plate because he had a good finish from Conor Morris. It was a good finish.
Well, it were a good finish and it were good. And it were good that the fact that a referee could have, because if you think about it, the build-up was really good. Louis Cantello got fouled, but rode the foul and very quickly, as sharp as a tack, Conor on it.
Yeah.
And the ball in the net. But if that had been any other player who wasn't as sharp as Conor in that instance, I think the referee were giving a free kick there.
Yeah, they were a cracking.
But it were a very, very good goal and it was well executed. And I thought, listen, Ben Thompson at times has taken quite a bit of, over, he's been up and down the consistency levels from where he's been. But he's another player. We've just talked about Conor Morris. If Ben's on it, he's a talent. He's a blinking talent.
Yeah.
He's listen. And you know what's good fodder for him? He's got somebody alongside him, like whether it be a Callum Hewitt or a Lewis Cantello. He's got somebody alongside him that can do all his blinking tackling, that can do all his things, and let the technician play.
Yeah. This
is when we've talked about the England setup in the past, when we've talked about World Cups and who's world-class players. We've talked about, Bobby Moore being potentially a world-class player, but Nobby Stiles not being. Well, Nobby Stiles is the one that wins everything, gets in the rough, gets in the mix, and then the technician does his bit.
It's what we class as a world-class player, though, isn't it? We kind of look at the flair and, the kind of technical ability, but we don't look at those who are digging holes, digging trenches.
Excuse me. No. So, and listen, and in that game, that second game, look, we had a look at Kyle, where Kyle were, where we played Kyle, and that's all we did it for. We need to have a look. These are what these games are about. We had a look at Kyle in where we played him, and we had a look at Ryan Siddall playing in front of the defence. We had a look at that, just to But when we're having a look at these things, these players, whoever they are, not just talking about Carl and Ryan here, I'm talking about every player. They've got to perform, because if a player goes in if a player's playing in a position, and there's competition for places, which there's going to be at the start of the season. Don't forget, I took 22 players to Moorside yesterday. 22 players they had there, right? But on top of that, 22 players, there was no Toby Wright who's injured. There was no Joey Fallon who was injured. There was no Alex Mellor who was injured. That's three. That's another three. Have they missed anybody else off there? But them three. So there were them three. There's them three to come back. All three were out injured.
Gervin wasn't there.
But Michael Gervin wasn't there. That's four. You get me? He's had COVID. So out of all them, so it's still another four players there, and we're all talented lads, all good players in their own right. So my point is, when it comes to the stat. You don't want to be. No player wants to be a one-trick pony because it's all about getting in the first team, right? Now, if you can more than cover other positions and do it admirably,
you've got a good chance of having a good long season.
Yeah, keeping in the team because you can move people about. If you can and you fail in these games, then obviously I'm going to think about it and then I'm going to say, well, I watched him at Moorside and he didn't do anything for me. I mean, look at Cal. We know what Cal's about and what Cal can do, right? But Cal playing in the centre of midfield at a number 10, he's been superb. So he's not a one-trick pony. We can play Cal in the 7 or 11 and we can play him in the 10. Yeah. But in that shape that we played in that second game yesterday, it kind of probably were a bit frustrating for Cal in the role he were playing yesterday. One is because he didn't get as much of the ball as he liked. But when he did get the ball, and this isn't being negative towards Moorside's pitch, but let's be honest, the pitch were a cabbage patch. So he's not only contending it when you're a player of that ilk, where you want you want close control and you're taking people on, right? It weren't running true on the pitch. He's having to contend with blinking.
It's like there's an earthquake going off, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. So you've got to make some allowances here,
of course,
because the pitch was. And listen, I'm not knocking Moorside's pitch, but it was shocking. It were like a blinking cabbage patch.
Nice and big though.
Yeah, it were nice and big. Yeah, but I mean, when you're a technical player like as Kyle is.
Yeah.
When he's got that ball and the grass is cut and everything's nice and he's got that ball, he can glide past people. But I'm not being funny. He's having to trap the ball, try and control it, and try and get round all the buttercups and weeds.
Yeah, a bit frustrating for him, but
so it were a bit frustrating. But yeah, listen. But at the end of the day, people look at the scoreline. Another. But scoreline doesn't matter. We've won the game overall. We've won the game 4-1. We've got to be pleased with that. We've got to be pleased with certain aspects in what went on in the game. There were two contrasting different teams playing. Some players excelled. Some players did really well. Some players disappointed. But like you said, it were more minutes in the legs, and that's all good.
That's what it was. Before we move on, we'll just have a quick look at the goals that we've been talking about. First one, Brett. We'll just talk through these. Hodgson stepping up to make it 1-0 from the spot. Nicely tucked away there by Ole.
So just on that one, can you just stop it a minute, right? Let me tell you.
Well, it's difficult to stop it. I can't stop it.
Right. But these media men, same yesterday at Corn. I watched Corn's penalty. So if Jekyll's taking a penalty, I'd say to my goalkeeper,
we know where he's putting it.
He's going to put it to your right.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why they put penalties on.
Well, it's only pre. We're only looking at pre. This was the pick of the bunch. Good build up, as you said. Jack Harewood into Liam Greenwood, and what a curler into that far corner.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well tucked away. Good movement as well, as you said, from Parker. And Jack again getting the assist there. And then the fourth one. Good build up this time down the left.
Yeah, Dom as well there. He needs, again, they're encouraging. Now, this is going to be a good talking point here now. After something I saw on social media yesterday with Gary Neville, and I disagree with Gary Neville. I thought he was blurting a load of crap. Right, so Dom, as you've seen there, Don Williams stepped in. Again, we're encouraging this.
Yeah, get forward support.
Stepped in, supporting, creates an overload. Passes through the thirds, right? Forward pass, and it creates a goal. with other players that do it, none more than Tyler Williams. He does it and does it fantastically well. I then go on social, and we're encouraging that. Let's get one thing straight. We're encouraging that. I heard a clip yesterday of Gary Neville's podcast with Roy Keane on and whoever else is on it. And Gary Neville is bleating about, why do we want to watch and spend time watching Middlesbrough's centre half coming out with the ball? He's like dogging it. He said that shouldn't be happening. Well, I totally disagree with him. Listen, just because he's made a blinking absolute fortune out of football and he's played at one of the biggest clubs in world football doesn't mean to say everything comes out of his mouth. He's right.
No.
Because on that one, I think he's chatting a load of verbal trash.
Well, there's no problem at all. Someone's stepping out, as long as someone's going to
drop in and cover
position.
you. Correct. And that's what my coaches have had them doing. I can't. They've excelled this pre-season. My coaches, let me tell you, Brian Russell, Nigel Langley, Alan Taylor, planned the sessions, got everything going. They've had the meetings with me. They know exactly what I'm after, where we want, what we're doing. All I do is stand back now and make sure a player's attitudes are right. Normally, I haven't been saying anything at half time. After that first 45-minute game, what we've just gone through and talked about, I had to say something because there was so much wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
Now, but really I shouldn't have to say anything because it's the coaches. They're with them on the training ground. They can see what I can see. One thing that I won't have, and I flipped, and I'm not going to tell you which one said it, but I've told him about it. When I have a coach, when I'm making comments on the line and we're talking and I turn around and we're all agreeing that it's a under par performance and certain players are letting themselves down, I don't expect one of my coaching staff to turn around and say, yeah, we've been brought down to their level. What sort of a statement is that? That's making excuses for players.
Yeah.
Because, and like I said,
well, you've got to set the standards.
You've got to set the standards. This is what I mean. Sometimes, naivety kicks in with them. Not with them all, but naivety kicks in. Again, I keep coming where I've come from. That would never be said in a round of football league environment because
you get punched if you did.
Can you imagine Sir Alex Ferguson turning round and Mickey Phelan turning round? Gaffer, I'm not being funny. We've just come down to their level. They go mad. Yeah. Go down to their level. So you're playing an FA Cup. You've got drawn against. Let's say you've got drawn against Cambridge in an FA Cup tie. And you're going to turn around and say, oh, we'll just go out at FA Cup because we've got dragged down to their level. What an absolute load of bollocks.
It don't cut much mustard, does it?
Freaking hell, I was going mad. I couldn't wait to get off that line to freaking strangle him.
I can just visualise it now. But no, that's where we've set the bar, haven't we? The standards are always high, and that's why sometimes we might come on the show and it might sound like you're being critical, but you're not. It's constructive criticism in order to make the players better than what they are.
Well, exactly that. 100%, Steve. And every game they come to, they've got to be prepared right, mentally tuned in, and be on it from the off.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to other football talk. We weren't too sure what we're going to chat about this morning, but I want to chat about... We often chat about Burnley. And I want to chat about this lad, James Trafford. Had his knockers at the club, including me, especially during the time of Vincent Kompany, but had an excellent season last season with Scott Parker, and now being touted with a possible move. Initially, it was to Newcastle, but it looks like Man City have stepped back in to sign him back. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that because, it's football, isn't it, at the end of the day? Again, if you look at Man City, big club, they'll have plenty of goalkeepers, goalkeepers that they really fancy and they think they've got a good future, but they're not going to get in at that particular time because, they've got senior keepers in. and so they have to go out and continue the development. You can't have them locked in a cupboard and have them locked away because they're going nowhere. And now, in James Trafford's situation, they've obviously thought highly of him, and he's been allowed to go to Burnley, and they've had a buy. There's obviously been set up a buyback clause should they ever require him. And they've obviously monitored his progress whilst he's been at Burnley. I know that Burnley, he's had his knockers in that season, but listen, Vincent Kompany
set him up,
must have had, thought highly of him. And yeah, it's like anything else. Keepers, very good keepers, young keepers are going to make mistakes. Listen, it goes with the territory. We've got a very, very good keeper at Bakeup. He's a great lad. He's dedicated. And it's funny because I said only a couple of weeks back, I see a lot of similarities in our keeper in James Trafford. But let's be honest, I question his angle, not anything else, just his angle for the second goal against Chadderton. I kind of think he showed too much of his near post. And when we spoke yesterday, just briefly before he went in changing room, he kind of agreed with me, But that's just a constructive little. That doesn't mean to say he's a bad keeper. He's not. It's just all. And while you're learning and while you're in that development arena, there's going to be situations where a young keeper, is going to make a wrong decision or make a mistake, and you're liable to get punished. But you can't destroy the kid. Yeah. And like James Trafford, we're getting destroyed.
It's good you can actually talk about it, and it's not going to cause any problems.
Correct,
because it's coming from a good place.
Now James Trafford. I remember his first season, and it were embarrassing, really, because the Burnley fans were pleading for the other guy. What were he called? Did it begin with N? Muric. Wanted him back in, but you know what? That's everything about where James Trafford is today. In my eyes, everything, his character and everything, because he's rode through that. Just think what you'd be like if you're in a club, you're in an arena, you've got to go out before 20,000 fans and 15,000 of them are baiting for your blood and saying they want Muric in, but you're out there in the arena, you just close off to it. He's just shown
That's where your inner strength comes from.
Yeah, exactly. He's shown great character, great determination. The goalkeeping coaches at Burnley have obviously worked well with him, and he's developed. And last season especially, I thought he were absolutely different gravy.
It was,
and it's no wonder that Man City are looking at him now to take him back. Whether he's ready to play in a Manchester City side every week that'll be competing in Europe, I don't know, but. Listen, there's only one way of finding out, and that's he's already proved he can play in the Championship and do well and consistently. Maybe he goes in at Man City and he works for 12 months with their experienced keeper, and then he becomes the firm number one. But if I were Man City, seeing as he started there and they had a buyback clause, I'd be making sure he don't go to Newcastle. That's for sure.
Yeah, but if he did go to Newcastle, you might see Pope come back in the other direction. That's a possibility.
Yeah, but why are all of a sudden? I mean, I don't know. I'm only asking this question. Why have Newcastle all of a sudden wanting a replacement for Pope when they were all for Pope? It's obviously he's obviously showed quite a few frailties somewhere along the line, and he's not what they've probably expected. I don't know, but I mean, Pope's ended up getting into England setup but also James Trafford's in the England setup, so. It is what it is. There's two good clubs there, two big clubs that's after his services. No disrespect to Burnley, and it's just reward at the end of the day for a topsy-turvy few years in terms of he's had to go through a lot, mental strength, like you said, but he's come through it and shone through it and done really well. And I think he's a keeper he deserves to be on the bigger stage, and that's no disrespect to Burnley.
Yeah, I agree. A show won't be a show without mentioning Manchester United, your side, and the story I'm picking up on, Brent, is this one, this chap, Marcus Rashford, and a possible move to Barcelona. What's your take on this one?
Well, my take on that on it as well.
Talking about falling in shit and smelling of roses. If he gets that move,
well, is he going to get it? I don't know. I mean, I just think Marcus has been a silly boy. I just think that sometimes players get above, even at non-league level. I think players get above the station because they think, they're a cult hero, they're banging goals in, we love him, he's a Manc, he's from Manchester. Everybody loved Rashford, didn't they? When he came on the scene at first, everybody loved him, and I think he's just got in the wrong hands of people, and his attitude's just gone. He's took his eye off the ball, and
sometimes players can surround themselves with the wrong people.
Well, that's 100%. That happens. 100%. They get with
bullshit in their ears.
Yeah, 100%. You've got to be stronger, but it happens throughout football. Look, I can go back years ago with, I were really close with Paul Fletcher. Paul Fletcher at the time, he were a big player. I mean, obviously not as big as like your Marcus Rashford's, but he was a big player. I mean, he played for England under 21s. He were a big player at Bolton Wanderers. He went on to have a good career at Burnley. And I'd be out with him sometimes, and the fucking people who come round him, and people who are like, wealthy businessmen and all that, but the bullshit that we used to be spoke out their mouth, and I'd say to him after, don't be fucking bullshit. He's I am Paul, and they'd be like dribbling down you like, hey, I watched you today at Turf Moor. You were absolutely fantastic. You rose like a salmon and got on the end of that ball. What an absolute frigging great goal. Oh, it was great to see Paul licking him like that. Next week up to us, the bloody guy will be slaughtering him.
Yeah. You're having a chat with Fletch saying, that weren't the game I saw.
and seriously, and he used to say to me, he used to try and get me go on these Dale Carnegie courses. I said, Paul, what do I want to go on these Dale Carnegie? To talk a load of bullshit. Yeah. I said, because that's all it is. It's bullshit and baffling brains to make people feel good.
Yeah.
Correct. But that's what people are like. But yeah, they get in the wrong. You've got to see through people. You've got to see through them. And I think some of these young footballers, they're taken in by them. And it's the same with agents. I mean, I knock agents like mad, but I know there's some exceptional, really, as we've had one on our show. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's some really, really good, exceptional that care for you and look after you and give you the best advice, always. But then there's others that are just after a good payday and they don't give
20%, aren't they?
Exactly. But I just think that it's a shame, really, about Marcus. It's a shame, but I think his days have gone at Man United. Even if they, I don't see anything. He's finished at Man United. It's as simple as that. And I just think that he's trying to manufacture a move to a club that he fancies. But do they fancy him? I don't know.
Well, I only mention it because this Man United legend came into the mix. He was on a radio show talking about it. He said pretty much that he didn't believe Rashford deserved a move to Barcelona. That was from Teddy. So even the ex-pros are getting involved in this discussion.
Yeah, but it's pretty obvious what's gone on at Man, and it happens at all clubs. Listen, you've obviously got a clique of people, and this is where we talk about, or I talk about, when you've got bad apples in the changing room.
Yeah.
You get them at every club. You've got to nip them out, but it's not easy when you're in the pro game because they're on long contracts, big money. I can do it in non-league when they're on peanuts.
Yeah.
You're on peanuts. I'd rather replace them with a bleeding monkey. It's simple.
Yeah.
But what you can imagine, because what's happened is there's obviously been a click at Old Trafford. You've got like Rashford has been chatting shit to blinking Garnacho. Garnacho has been chatting. They've all been chatting shit, and then they're ganging up on the manager. They don't like his philosophy. Don't forget Fergie. Rashford has had Fergie. And then he'd probably be comparing and. That's bollocks what he's telling you to do. He's bollocks. So before you know where you are, instead of players kind of thinking for themselves and wanting to do their own thing and think for they don't. They follow the sheep. They follow. Yeah, no, it's bollocks, isn't it? Look at that. Look, it's fucking rubbish. And that's what they do. They're a clique. And before you know where you are, Rubin's obviously sussed this and realises it to the point that he wants them out.
Yeah. Well, he's probably sussed it. I think you mentioned it must have been about a month or so ago, maybe 4 or 5 shows ago. Before Rubin went to United, he'd have got the heads up from Jose about the runners and riders in the club.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then when Garnacho's doing what he's doing, and sulking because he's not been picked, or sulking because he thinks he's got a divine right to be in a
social
cup
media
final
with
thing.
stupid little comments.
And go on, yeah, exactly. All them things, it's not good. So straight away, there's only one end, and that's the door. You go, listen. If you don't, why would you be at a club? And I'm even talking non-league club now. If you don't like the club's, and when I say the club, the manager of that club's philosophy, and you don't want to buy into it, right? Well, then go. Don't start slaughtering, because there's no divine right in any football. You know what football? You watch football. You'll go to one team who'll play a 4-2-3-1. You'll go to another team that'll play 3-5-2. You'll go to another team, that'll play 4-4-2. They'll all have the different ways of playing. They'll all have the different styles. They'll all do different things. But there's no given right to say that is bollocks, that is the right way.
No.
Everybody has different ways. And at the end of the day, if you don't like, it's like going to work. If you don't like the job you're doing, don't start slagging your van off. Don't start slagging your blinking gaffer off in the blinking, the company you're working for. Don't start slagging them. Just find another job and see you later and goodbye.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. If you think you're better in football than what you really are, and you think you're better, and the manager doesn't pick you, then at the end of the day, go and prove you're better. Go and find another club. Don't be at my club dropping bombs and chatting shit. Because what's the point? Just get out the door. Just go and prove it.
Yeah. Go and be happy somewhere else.
Correct. Simple. It's just easy. It's your life. But why start slagging people off? If he doesn't like it at Manchester United, that's give him his career and give him it like that. Keep quiet. It's time to move on. Just move on, do your job, and go and prove it. Yeah. Don't try and prove a point.
Players just come and go anyway. It's just life.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. You not always agree. Even now we'll have players. One player came off apparently at Chadderton. I didn't hear him. It's a good job that he turned around and he said, "I should be in this because he's had a reasonable game. I should be in this starting lineup." Should you? Well, be consistent. Prove it. Let's see what you're about. Can you get across the pitch? Is your passing retention good? Are you giving the ball away? It's no good saying you've made one excellent pass that's led to a goal, but you've given the ball away 6 other times that's freaking put us on back foot because your ball retention's been poor.
But it's not that. During pre-season, Brent, you've got to look at the entire squad and give them game time.
100%. That's why there were 22 with us yesterday.
Yeah. Another point I want to make, I did spot it. I just wanted to get your take on it. On the county's website, bit of sad news, disappointing news from them. Statement made, North West Counties Limited are disappointed to announce the cancellation of the 2025 North West Counties Champions cup fixture between Charnock, Richard and Bury. And this was because, by all accounts, Bury is saying they didn't have enough players. Now, what's that all about?
Well, but listen, just Bury, just obviously chatting. There's obviously agendas somewhere along the line. And, listen, I'm not privy to what. Obviously, they've had issues since they've been in the league, right? Now, we've all had issues with the league that you're in. You always have issues. And sometimes the league has got to make decisions that are unpopular decisions. We get that. I mean, it happens every year with me. This time of the year, they have this rule, that, and it's dropped through. It started last week. I got a blinking charge through. We're not even kicking off us for another month. But yet I've got a blinking charge through. Right? Now, listen, I'll just answer the charge like anybody else. But the reason I've got a charge through is because the rules state you should have 14 players registered on the North West Counties League portal
by a certain date.
A certain date, right? But that date is designated from when their season is going to start. You follow me?
Yeah.
Now, most of the time, I never have 14 players on that portal because holidays and stuff like that, they're not always there to get them on the form. Yeah. So I'm breaking a rule. So obviously they sent me a charge notice. Now, whether I like it or I don't like it, I'm getting charged. Whether I think it's bollocks or it's not bollocks, I've got to put up with it. It is what it is. So in terms of going back to Bury, if they've had issues during this time that they've been in the North West Counties League, and the issues that's happened have been made
a bit of a bitterness,
bitterness, and so they're at loggerheads with the league. What they've got to be careful of here at the Bury contingent and the supporters. Do they not think, because they're now trying to get back on track and progress up the National League system, and they're trying to obviously eventually get back into doing a Salford City and getting into the Football League, right? Do they not realise that these heads of these leagues, or the heads of the North West Counties League, are in close, in bed closely with the heads of the Evo Stick League, and so on and so forth. So they'll
have regular meetings and meet up for events.
They'll all be talking and they'll all be saying, and they'll ask questions and they'll say, what happened with Bury with that? And then obviously the people at North West County, they'll tell them. So they'll end up joining the Evo Stick League, and before they know where they are, the Evo Stick League will be mindful of what they did in the North West Counties League and the rebuff that they created. So it's not going to stand them, is what I'm trying to say, in good stead in pulling stunts if that's what they're doing. It won't stand them in good stead, right? They've got to be very, very careful because, in my opinion, this is a farcical situation. They're turning round and saying, now either, if you read the Bury statement, right, it's slightly conflicting. They're trying to use the excuse that the under-23s have walked out. They've finished. They're not there any. They're not there anymore. And they're trying to say that they were going to play their under-23s. Why would you play your under-23s in a creditable, right, cup final, which is a Champions of Champions Cup final, which is the showcase opener for the North West Counties Football League? You wouldn't. That is a load of absolute bollocks, right? In my eyes. Equally, they've known long enough that they've got this game in the calendar because obviously they've won they've won the league. Charnock Richard have won the cup, so they know that is coming together. So at the end of the day, they've got a scheduled friendly on Tuesday night with Cheadle.
Yeah.
So that team that's playing Cheadle, why can that team not play in this blinking Champions of Champions Cup? and they cancel that friendly. Because surely they'll get more out of the game as a manager. You're going to get more out of that game with Charlotte Richard, right? Which is obviously to win a cup, whether it's at the start of a season or an end of a season, that you are doing, no disrespect to Cheadle, than you are going to do playing Cheadle in a friendly.
I just think it smells of the fact that, we're not in the North West Counties no more. We've moved on. We don't want anything to do with you.
Maybe, but they've got to be very, very careful, I think. And I think they're leaving in a bad taste. It's disappointing. Yeah. I think the genuine people in football will, it won't sit comfortably with them people. And then people as well, even though it's got nothing to do with them, genuine people could be the hierarchy of the next league that they're going to be competing in. So, it won't sit comfortably with them either, because people talk. So it's not good.
Anything more to add, Brent? Is there anything we've forgotten this week?
Yeah, I'd just like to wish one of my former players, listen, as a footballer, it's always tough when you get an injury, a long-term injury. Our own Aidan Housey has had he's still not back yet. He's had an ACL injury, which is a bad injury. Nathan Emery, who previously played for me, a great lad, wholehearted in his football, dedicated, but wholehearted. When I mean wholehearted, he's a winner. Yeah. And he plays like he's a winner. He suffered a broken leg a couple of seasons back, bounced back from it, recovered, come back strong. But sadly, again, yesterday against Atherton Allar in a friendly, playing for Darwin, he suffered another broken leg. Never easy. When we talk about mental strength, mental toughness, Nathan's going to have that in abundance now. We don't realise it's not just a broken leg; it's all the other issues that come with it, not being able to work, and things like that. So, my heartfelt goes out to Nathan, but he's a strong lad. I'm sure he'll be back at some time. And I wish him all the best. But my thoughts are with him at this particular time, because it's, I suffered, many years ago. I fractured my femur, and did my ACL at the same time, and it's tough. But to have it twice, as Nathan has, it really is tough. So my thoughts are with everybody, with Darwin, because he's lost a good, very, very good lad, and my thoughts are with Nathan.
Yeah, and finally, we're next Saturday, we're off to Lower Breck, which will be a tough game. They've just recently been promoted. That is going to be a toughie. That's a stern test for the lads. Yeah,
it's a great test for us, and I'm looking forward to going back there. But the lads, there can't be any complacency there and having attitude issues, because this will probably be their last friendly before their season starts. It might not be, but it might be the next to the last. But I'll tell you now, they'll go strong, and we need to be mindset needs to be the best it can be, and our, we've just got to be ready for it's not just any pre-season friendly, that it's a tough one, and it's one that, I'm glad that they've taken us, and we deserve to give them a good side out there, so that they can give their lads a good test, before they start the season.
Brilliant. Excellent show as always. Good insights, Brent. Always honest. And I'll see you next week.
Top man. Thank you.